In 1951, the Holmesburg prison of Philadelphia experienced an outbreak of athlete's foot. In order to control the situation, the prison requested the help of Dr. Albert Kligman, a dermatologist from the University of Pennsylvania. Kligman took this request as an opportunity to test his own products and their effects on human skin. These products included toothpaste, deodorant, shampoo, skin creams, detergents, liquid dyes, eye drops, foot powders, and hair dye. These tests and trials were performed on prisoners' backs and faces for the going rate of $10 up to $300, depending on the product being tested. The prisoners were not fully informed of the products being tested on them or the potential complications. Kligman abused his position working in the prison, and later on, a company called Dow Chemical requested he investigate a drug called dioxin, a drug which had been used as the main poisonous agent in Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a herbicide and defoliant used by the U.S. military in a warfare program during the Vietnam War. The purpose of the test was to determine how much a human could take before death, and Kligman was being paid over $10,000 to find out. However, again abusing his power, Kligman exposed approximately 75 prisoners to a dosage over 468 times greater than what the protocol from Dow had stated. The ethical principles challenged in this experimentation are respect for persons and beneficence, with issues regarding autonomy, informed consent, and coercion. Respect for persons defines the concept that all people deserve the rights to fully exercise their autonomy. Although the prisoners volunteered, they were unaware of the products being tested on them and were left with scars, blisters, cysts, and ongoing rashes following the skin trials. Prisoners complained of personality changes, anxiety, and intense paranoia following the dioxin treatment given to them by Dr. Kligman. Due to these adverse effects and the promise of cash 67 times the amount of any other going prison rate at the time, the prisoners were taken advantage of, not fully informed, and were fundamentally wronged by Kligman. In 1974, Kligman's experiment was shut down and he destroyed all records and evidence pertaining to the Holmesburg experiments. 2 years later, the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare released a report condemning the use of prisoners in human subjects research, which then inspired the federal government to pass strict regulations limiting prisoner experimentation to narrower categories on non-intrusive, low-risk, and individually beneficial research. These regulations passed by Congress were called Title 45 of the Code of Federal Regulations. It caused multiple drug companies to close drug testing facilities in prisons across the country, and at the same time, forced the end of doctors like Kligman from conducting research programs in prison. Once the extent of what was known of Kligman's experiments and these reports were being published, he was confronted and stated that it was years before the authorities knew I was conducting various studies on prisoner volunteers. Things were simpler then. Informed consent was unheard of. No one asked what I was doing. It was a wonderful time. These experiments took place after the Nuremberg Code and the Hippocratic Oath were published. As Kligman directly violated multiple components of each, and it was apparent that physicians were not abiding by their rules and continuing to abuse their power, changes had to be made. Because of the ongoing experimentations, in 1978, the Department of Health and Human Services released and later revised in 1991 guidelines regarding protection pertaining to biomedical and behavioral research involving prisoners as subjects. The guidelines stated that, inasmuch as prisoners may be under the constraints because of their incarceration, which could affect their ability to make a truly volunteer and uncoerced decision whether or not to participate as subject in research, it is the purpose of this subpart to provide additional safeguards for the protection of prisoners involved in various research activities. In 2006, the Institute of Medicine released a federal report titled Ethical Considerations for Research Involving Prisoners. The report looked to further the strict guidelines set previously by calling for changes in the ethical standards governing medical experiments on prisoners. The report tackled issues of justice, respect for persons, and beneficence by expanding the definition of prisoner, ensuring consistent ethical protection, and shifting research programs in prison to follow a risk-benefit approach. Because of the regulations and the guidelines set after the Holmesburg experiments, prisoners today are better protected from undergoing the same horrors that were previously experienced by Kligman subjects.